Welcome to the Case Solving and Case Presentation Introduction, Part 5, discussing how we can convince the jury about the details, the short-term and long-term details of how we can move forward and basically take the company case from as it is today, where we want to see the solution in the future for the company to prosper, to survive. So, the short-term solution is about the small actions, the small changes that we can introduce short-term and is potentially a first step into the overall direction. Again, we would consider the why, what, how, and as we discussed during the short-term solution section, we would ask rather narrow questions. Yes, so now Simon can, or we help Simon with. So it's basically making things better, cheaper, faster for Simon. And we select some of the managerial aspects, like typically marketing, maybe technology, an app or so, that we can implement easily, quick, and doesn't interfere with our overall business, at least not that much. Yes, important, focus on how, details of how, not so much the what and the why. Great. So typically marketing and employee staff aspects are important. And what I believe is also important is make these aspects specific. Yes, so this would be the idea of a zoo, and here you would have the ticket sales. Yes, so the new price would be €5, the old price would be 8. Yes, so make it very, very specific, and of course explain why. Before you come up with that solution, you obviously have to say that you want to reduce the entrance fee prices, but you want to increase additional sales through like selling animal fodder. And then after introducing this idea, then you can very explicitly indicate what the prices are. Or in the case of our emergency service that we mentioned previously, we would use the existing app that they have and say, okay, we want to introduce this emergency app, and this is what you can see, this is the information that you can see on the emergency app, and this is how it actually helps to the overall problem. So make it very, very specific, make it visual, make it visibly how that works. The same thing would be for Adopt a Panda program. Yes, what are the details? Yes, what are the details and how would it look like? And down here, we would have another example from the emergency service where there is a direct link between pictures that have been provided and how that maps into the actual map, and therefore we could guide our support services or emergency services to the places where it is possible to go. Again, we would also include which partner are being used. So make it very, very specific. And as you can see, if you make such a mock-up of a screen, let's say, immediately you are behind the scenes transmitting so many messages. Yes. So in this case, as it would be immediately clear that it is the existing app, that it is extended, that there is some color coding, yes, that is introduced, there is some passes, yes, there is some areas, and maybe you don't have to introduce all the details now. Typically you have a Q&A section, so after your presentation the jury can ask questions, and you always have the opportunity to come back and explain more details about this app. But with such a visual mock-up, it indicates that you have considered a lot of details and made the dots connect. One aspect that you might want to consider are customer stories or customer journeys. Yes, typically a company has a certain way how it believes a customer walks through the company offerings, or when does it hear about the product or the offering, and how does it get in contact, and so on. And you can introduce this customer journey in the analysis phase, in the insight phase, and then in the short-term solution, which actually has a name. I told you before that in the management summary, there should be a name. So when you explain this solution, then you basically repeat this customer journey again, and you make it specific. Yes, a smart dustbin. Yes, a barcode. Yes, so you basically tie into the existing customer story, or how the company approaches a customer, and you're basically indicating which parts you improve, you make it easier for the customer, and which parts you cut out or which parts you add to that customer journey. That's one way to indicate to the jury how big the changes effectively are. And typically, juries are happy for small changes with big impact. So, the short-term solution, which has a name, yes, makes the jury understand the details of how the company is going to change for quick wins, and how it ties into the overall situation that we want to achieve with our solution. As we discussed for the long-term solution in the green process, in solution development process, the long-term suggestion here in the jury presentation is again related to the what, to the why, what, how, but it looks into a little bit more long-term aspects that Simon wants to have changed, and what we can actually change and how we can change that. Again, we focus on some managerial aspects that are most important, and it might be marketing, maybe technology, we talked about it, maybe supplier, maybe processes that can be changed. Some companies, they ask for out-of-the-box solutions. I would be very careful about this, because a lot of companies, they are very, very interested in efficiency, and efficiency automatically means narrow scope, doing things repeatedly the same. Yes, so if you start doing things differently or doing very different things, a company might be overwhelmed quite quickly. So if they talk about out of the box, they actually mean very small step out of the box. And we believe out of the box is like reinventing the world. But that's not what companies typically want. They don't want to reinvent the world. They want a sneak peek at how does the world look outside the box. Sneak peek. Yes, great. So again, some examples. So here might be an example from the zoo again. So this is basically the variety of the different events that could apply at a zoo. That's a great overview, so to say. What it actually lacks is prioritization. I would introduce some criteria, how should those events be selected, and then also a rating, to what extent decoration and play would actually comply with these criteria. So the criteria would be feasibility. Feasibility is always a good one. How easy it is to copy by the competitor. The time is required to actually set it up, and let's say, for instance, how easily it can be repeated again if it turns out to be a success. But it is a great example how now in the long-term solution you have to look at things a little bit broader, a little bit more comprehensively, yes, and not so narrow detailed as we've seen before. Another approach that typically works quite well is that we compare our suggestions. So this is a suggestion that we're using artificial reality for our emergency services. And we're basically saying that the US Army has a solution, US Army has a solution, and it does certain things, basically indicates dangerous spots and so on. And we can actually use the same fundamental technology for our purpose. Yes? So here we're basically describing that we are using a technology, in this case it's a technology, benefits that have been developed for a different industry, for our industry. That's an approach that typically works quite well for long-term suggestions. If you only say we can use artificial reality, then the jury might be very confused. But if you compare it to something that other industries already do, then that's great. The next example is actually 2 slides. Yes, that's the example of a partner. So you want to bring on board a new partner, ESRI in this case. So in the first slide, you basically explain how the overall ecosystem works, and then you argue why this specific partner is required and what it actually brings to the table in order to make that ecosystem work that you have introduced above. So again, if you talk about partners, and partners is always a good suggestion, because it indicates that the solution exists already. Somebody is already thinking about these new offerings, these new products that we want to include for our customers. But you have to make it very, very specific how this partner fits to our current offering or our current company proceeding. So the long-term solution allows the jury to understand what are the key aspects of the future trends that must be mastered and how that could be done. I indicated that you have to be comprehensive in the suggestions, but you also have to select them using different industries or using partners is always a great example to convince the jury that these somewhat crazy sounding ideas are actually possible. Now, this concludes part 5, where we try to look at how can we take the solutions that we have developed during the green process and convince the jury that our solution actually fit the actual content of where the company is as of today.